Welcome back. Well, why are we so quick to outrage these days? Now users have been angry over the weekend at the Snapchat CEO's comments saying he didn't want to invest in India since they're a high-end product and India is a poor country. Now, this is what he's been reported to have said. There's really no confirmation except an ex-employee's word for it in court. It's led to, as you can imagine, a lot of anger, especially on social media. Angry customers decided to delete the Snapchat app. But here's the twist in the tale. They ended up deleting Snapdeal, the e-commerce company, from their phones. Now, Evan Spiegel's fiancée is also being trolled, and the entire nationalism debate is playing out on her timeline of all places. Well, let me introduce my panel to you as we discuss why we're so easily outraged these days. I'm joined in my Delhi studios by Shivam Vij in Gurgaon. We have Advaita Kala, writer and columnist. Dilip Cherian, CEO Perfect Relations, joins us from Mumbai. And there is Rauli, activist with us on Skype from Thiruvananthapuram. Thanks so much, all of you, for being with us today. Dilip Cherian, let me start by asking you, as you know, you're into the business of image and just how important image is in this day and age. Why is it that this has us outraged so much, including those who are clearly not clear about what Snapchat is all about, but they are clear, A, that they are outraged, and B, that they have to vent, and so they do the next best thing, find the word snap and delete the app.
You know, this is typically a case of, as you said, combined outrage of the young, of the it generation. Please understand that most of these people react to the net on the phones, and it's almost like instantaneous. The real thing that Snapchat did wrong was not have its CEO come and deny the statement if it was to be denied immediately. The problem with today's generation and the kind of marketplace that we are working in at the moment is that, as in PR we recognize this all the time, is that if you don't react within the first 40 minutes of something happening, outrage gets into almost like a national movement. And you are right that we tend to get outraged far more easily and then tend to react because it's so easy. All you have to do is use your fingers.
That's a good point. National movement around outrage. And Shivam Vij, you would agree that that's what it sort of sometimes feels it's come to. It's almost like you wake up in the morning and what is there to be outraged about today? Where is this angst and this anger, this rage really coming from?
I think it's always been there. Maybe it's just easier to express with the internet. We're all full of rage and anger about lots of things, and one of those is nationalism. Now, as a country, we seem to be very insecure of our Indian identity. Anybody says anything against us, we are totally up in arms and we want to delete their app and give it bad rating and, write tweets against it, the company, and Facebook posts against the company. If an Indian company had said, we don't want to be in the US, we don't like those people, there would have been no reaction in the US. But I think it's also a sense of shame that makes us want to express our nationalist outrage all the time over everything. How dare he call us poor when in fact we are a poor country? Whether or not he really said it, the truth is that we are a poor country. 1/3 of the world's poor live in India. We have the highest number of malnutrition children, with the highest number of under 5 deaths. Children who die before they turn 5 because our health care for maternity health care is so bad. So, I mean, I'm glad in this country we want to actually deny that we are a poor country. We have internalized that we are doing well, that we are some kind of a developed country, be it the government or the opposition or the media or the average Indian. We all have convinced ourselves that we are no longer a poor country, when in fact we have the largest population of the extreme poor.
Advaita Kala, come in at this point. Are we in denial? What makes us so uncomfortable when someone says something like this? But, the biggest point is that why are we so sensitive about our national pride? Surely it shouldn't be so fragile.
It shouldn't be so fragile. We have a lot to be proud of, certainly. I think part of it is just, post-colonial redux to a certain extent, the whole sort of unwashed masses kind of analogy, which has been so deeply ingrained into our conscience when we hear of things that have happened in the past, which makes us extremely prickly about anything that, you know, as Shivam said, even something which is true, which is that in fact, indeed, we do have a lot of poverty in our country, and it's something that we have to fight and conquer. But I think this response really comes on a psychological level from that kind of experience that we've had as a country, not in the very recent past, just 70 years ago. So I think that explains some of that. And the other part is, of course, just Twitter. You know, I mean, we in the past, few earlier generations had the jukebox. We now have the vent box, you know, which is Twitter, really, and everyone gets on there mostly to vent. I see very little kind of real conversation come out of Twitter anymore.
Absolutely. That's, of course, the other problem of the dark side of social media. But Rahul, but coming at this stage, there's, of course, one point that the stats can't be denied. When he says poor country, how do we stand up and say, no, actually, he's got it all wrong? The other point in the story is that we don't even know whether he said it. It's an ex-employee. There's no confirmation on that. And the third point, you know, another interesting point is that, you know, when they talk about a poor country, it's possible, as has been put out today, that he was talking about poor internet connections. Again, something that we haven't been able to deny. We need high-speed connections for Snapchat. That's where it works best. They don't look at Android users, versus the maximum number of phone users, smartphone users in the country. So it could be a variety of things, but that didn't stop anyone from going out there, venting, trolling him, trolling others of the company, trolling his fiancée, and of course deleting Snapdeal's app inadvertently.
The total population of America is around 30-35 crores, and our middle class, which is more vibrant than the entire American population, is more than 35 crores. Yes, we are a poor country. Maybe after 200 to 300 years of foreign slavery, from 24% GDP of the world, we have dropped down to 1 or 2% of GDP. We all concede. But when you brand a nation as poor, or when you condemn a nation as some kind of unworthy place, of course, any person with nationalistic pride will be offended. Just imagine, had the same been said about any community, wouldn't it have been caused some kind of an outrage? And the interesting thing is that all the media would say that it is a thing that should be outraged. The interesting thing to note is that the liberal media, which usually has a monopoly of outrages or getting outraged at simpler things, is right now getting outraged that nationalists are getting outraged.
I love the way nationalism has crept into every debate. It made it to my previous debate also this evening. It's here, Shivam.
You know, the problem is that these Indians who are outraged over Snapchat, they are not proud enough. They claim to be proud about India, they claim to be nationalists, but they are not nationalists enough. If they were nationalists enough, they would be secure in their national identity and would not be outraged. It's like it's so easy for anybody to outrage Indians. Any random CEO anywhere in the world has to say, oh, India is a poor country and Indians will lose their shit. No, we don't have to. If you were actually proud enough of your country, you would not be this outraged.
Okay, that's a good point. Dilip Charan, would you agree? Perhaps the one big response, the one easy response would have been just holding up the numbers when Snapchat decided not to focus. When I just finished my question, when Snapchat decided not to focus on India, instead Facebook and WhatsApp were doing just that, Instagram was doing that. Just look at the millions of users they have compared to the barely 4 million that Snapchat had. That could have been one response.
You know, don't forget that this is a company which has just IPO'd and has a valuation of about $20 billion. Right. So it's a huge company and it clearly has a world market which the world markets recognize. I think that what is happening now is that whether it's nationalism or it's outrage, what is happening is that young people believe that they don't have to do anything except move their little finger. So moving their little finger is the most they will actually do to exercise their nationalism or their outrage. Okay. You know, I've heard people say that, oh, how can we be a poor country? We hired James Bond to advertise for our gutka. So I think that people don't recognize that the kinds of measures that the world takes about internet penetration, about the quality of internet service, about the data download speeds, and basically the kind of attitude that's required for a very large market is something that India is moving towards. I'm glad we are moving towards it, but we don't need to get so much on a high horse about some guy who makes a comment about it, possibly because he's either underinformed or he's looking at the market from a different perspective.
Okay, but Advaita Kala, come in here. You know, this is again that fragile national pride, again the same brush with which we are all painted. Like I said, this is the same topic, just the same phrase that just crept up in my previous debate and then now this one as well. But we're so quick to outrage. And the point that Dilip Charan made, that all we are willing to do is sort of move our fingers right on it on our laptops or on our phones, and we think we've done our bit towards nationalism and nationalistic pride.
Well, and that's the part that is painful in some sense, because there is so much energy out there, there is so much dialogue, there is so much debate, but usually it gets sort of sequestered also in a sense into these kind of inanities, and nothing actually happens. Today I was reading an article about malnutrition in our metros and how Delhi could be compared with some of the sub-Saharan nations, when it came to malnutrition in children. So there's some very, very real issues that we genuinely should outrage about and focus on, but that never seems to happen.
Right. Rahul, but I'm told that you're back with us. Respond to that. The point that's being made both by Shivam and Advaita is the fact that there's just so many challenges. I mean, look at hunger, poverty, the list really is endless. Look at where we are on healthcare, education. We can just go on endlessly, but we do not see the same people that you're calling nationalists really outrage on any of that.
See, every nation will have its own challenges. No Indian or Indian official calls America racist, because they do have race problems, and we all know that. Every nation will have its own challenges, but it is not right to stereotype a nation or brand a nation in a particular way.
We call them racist, Rahul, we call them racist, we call them out for what they are very often, but when the same thing is, but when we do the same thing to people from another part of the world, then we don't use the term racist.
We shouldn't accept, we shouldn't respect and give some kind of a credibility to these kind of colonial attitudes of people who are in the West, who still believe India is still kind of a colony they can exploit.
India may not be a very rich colony right now, so India is poor like Spain. In future, he may be able to come and exploit. It's a kind of a wrong colonial hangover they have. Of course, we do have issues and we will sort it out. We don't need a white man burden to tell us what to do about our nation, and we need not want any certificate from the Westerners for whether we are rich or poor. They exploited us and they made us in this situation.
Just like
even as centrist Shashi are saying, they exploited us. That's the reason we are in this state.
Okay, just like we don't need any certificate from them, perhaps it could also be argued, and why should we be affected by them at all? If they're not important, if they're nobody to judge us, then why are they important at all? Shivam?
Absolutely. I think Rahul's anger is very misplaced. When he says, who is America to label us? America has not said anything. One CEO who happens to be American or lives in America.
They have business reasons also.
Right, I mean, we cannot take one CEO's view as America's view, right?
Yes, Dilip, I'm told you want to make a point?
Yeah, the other point is that there are two interesting aspects to this. One is that Rahul talks about this colonial hangover, but it's 70 years ago. So I'm wondering whether these kids have any idea of what a colonial hangover is. The second thing is that if a CEO is talking about this, the best answer to this from India, if we indeed are super bright, super capable of investing and have the money to do it, would be to create an app which allows us to either mimic or better the Snapchat experience. Right. Unfortunately, if you look across the world, almost every country is creating brands, but India has been unable to do that despite a legacy of the last 17 or 18 years of being at the cutting edge of international IT business.
That's a good point. Hit perhaps where it hurts, show them that you can do it and perhaps you can do it better. I'm starting to run out of time, but Advaita, coming quickly, this culture that we're seeing is not going to change. In fact, if anything, what we've seen, thanks to social media, it's now all pervasive, it's all out there. You can wake up and you can choose a whole host of issues in the morning and decide what you want to outrage on, vent on, and how do you want to give expression to that kind of frustration, anger, angst, nationalism, you can call it what you want.
Absolutely, and I think we should stay away from calling it any particular sort of brand of anything, be it being a liberal or being a nationalist or being X or being Y. I think we should just move away from that, because that leads to even more polarizing and more sort of toxic discourse. I think the important thing is really we need to figure out ways of channeling these good intentions, if those are indeed what they are, and not just, sort of outrage because you have a platform to do it on, but really look at ways of bringing this together into social movements of sorts. Certainly, there is a building of consensus. There are things that get the kind of attention which they wouldn't have received earlier. Whether we saw most recently with the Shiv Sena MP and his behavior on the plane. If social media hadn't stepped in the way it had, it would have probably not been circulated that much and got that kind of traction with even the media picking it up and pushing forward, because those are the only two columns, so to speak, who did anything about it. No one else did.
So, of course, Air India then had to take him back, and that ban, of course, had to be lifted. But that's, of course, another story, another debate. But Ralph Ishwar, you know, before I wrap, I've heard what you had to say. We've all heard what you had to say, that, you know, you're, of course, saying that the anger, the angst is really justified. How can anyone say it, and so on and so forth. But how then do you explain that people didn't even know what they were outraging against? They went and deleted the wrong app. How do you explain that?
See, please remember, please see the intention. Many people might have misspelled it, many people might have misunderstood it. We agree that it was, misunderstood by some people for another app. But please remember, why are they outraged? They are outraged because they have genuine patriotic feelings, and they don't want anybody to stereotype or negatively brand India. Is it such a crime in India to be outraged for a nationalistic cause? Had it been for a so-called liberal or secular cause, people would have been more happy, saying that they are very good people. Then they are outraged about a nationalistic.
Nobody is judging anyone, but okay, carry on.
Negatively branding India. So people say that even feeling outraged for somebody insulting India is bad. That is unfortunate.
Okay. When is outrage justified and when is it not? When is it good outrage or bad outrage? Perhaps that's another debate that we'll leave for another day. But
I think what is
Go ahead.
Yeah. It is a case of anti-nationalism where they go out and delete a nationally generated app when they're trying to either downgrade or remove a foreign app. So I think in some senses we have to recognize that even in terms of outrage, our competence and our capability is something that's on display on the internet. So it's going to be available to everybody to see what the end effect of all this was.
Right.
It's all quite a comedy.
More of a self-call, really. But like I said, good outrage, bad outrage, who's going to decide when it's justified and when not? But Advaita Kala, Dilip Cherry and Shivam Vij and Rahul Ishwar, thanks all so much for your time.